Last night's Board of Directors meeting in Fort Smith was a masterclass in NIMBYism. We got to hear all the same talking points that created the modern city of San Francisco, and if you haven't watched my earlier video about California land use politics in Arkansas, consider this the proof in the pudding. There's one exchange that perfectly sums up everything that's wrong with Arkansas's land use politics, but before I play it, I wanted to express how disappointed I am in the overwhelming force that our government is using to centrally plan our economy. Some of the more common talking points I hear against Move Fort Smith is that it affects private property rights, which is not true, but here we have an actual example of zoning being used to destroy someone's private business.
An ordinance amending the master land use plan map and rezoning identified property and amending the zoning map, and this is for properties located at 2200 Broken Hill Drive and 9200 Jenny Lind Road.
Or to put it in other words, somebody wants to build some housing, they're going to invest in Fort Smith, 15 single-family houses in yellow, 3 duplexes in orange, and 2 commercial lots in that pink color.
There's no entrances from Jenny Lind as I read this map. Is that correct? There's no drive-in, driveway entrances.
There's no access from Jenny Lind.
What they're describing is road hierarchy, which is this idea that cars will be funneled up into higher strata of road classifications that will carry higher capacity and at higher speeds. I think road hierarchy is really good in many cases. When we start applying it in residential areas, it can get a little difficult for me, but in this case, Jenny Lind is a major residential collector, so limiting the number of driveways, especially in this neighborhood, would be a really good thing, I think, and I agree with this decision.
They orient, the front facade is oriented towards Jenny Lind for continuity of design.
And the access to these for cars is, it looks like a sort of an alley. Now, when they have visitors, I'm not sure where the visitors park. There's nowhere to park on the street because Jenny Lind in that area is a divided road.
That's a great point, and it's something that I would consider if I were a potential tenant trying to decide whether I wanted to live in this neighborhood. But that's a decision for the potential tenant. It's not a decision for the government.
The biggest complaint I'm hearing is that the duplexes on Jenny Lind do not fit the neighborhood.
I don't know, it looks kind of okay to me.
Why didn't you put the duplexes in 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20 next to the apartment complex and put single-family homes along Jenny Lind?
I'm not sure if that's something that the government should be in charge of deciding for their citizens.
So my question is, would your client be willing to forego the duplexes on Jenny Lind? But you see the concern because it doesn't fit the aesthetics until the Vaughn's issue.
Duplexes can fit any aesthetic. It's just a house with 2 doors.
Where are they going to park at? What guarantee is this going to happen besides the police go out there and write tickets?
Why bother incorporating as a city at all if the barrier for participation is a guarantee that all visitors will park exactly where the government tells them to park? We should build for the way that people actually live, not the lifestyles that we wish they had.
Because I don't know how many people would like to have their backyards facing an apartment complex.
That sounds like a business decision for a business, not a government decision for a government.
1,600 houses in Fiona Hills would prefer that being homes instead of being duplexes.
That's great, and if the citizens think that that's something that they really want to do, an investment that they want to make, they should buy that lot and build that there. It's not an appropriate use of tax dollars for a government to decide how charming something ought to be, or decide what charming is, because then you have to have standards of what charming is, and then you have to have an appeals process and a bureaucracy that goes along with that.
Because, this whole thing has been a stagger in these people's heads for 5 years, and it feels like this is just the last straw that the landowner wants to do is put duplexes on the entryway to their homes that they've lived there for 20, 30 years.
Really, because the entryway right now is a Jam Mart, and I love Jam Mart, but I think duplexes would be a really big improvement over a gas station. Even a gas station as good as Jam Mart.
Director Neil Martin.
Maggie, who pays for the street? Is that the developer or is that the city?
The developer.
Okay, thank you.
This is a great question, and it gets to the core of what this whole channel is about, which is the relationship between public and private dollars when it comes to new developments in Fort Smith. If you're not already familiar with it, the way that most new construction works in the United States is that developers will pay for all of the upfront infrastructure costs associated with a new development. Things like sidewalks, streets, sewers, wastewater, everything like that. That cost gets passed on to the consumer when they buy the parcel and build a house there or whatever. The question that our planning commissioners and our board of directors need to ask is that, does the long-term maintenance cost of that infrastructure cost more to maintain than the tax revenue generated by these new parcels?
Director Christina Casavage.
Can you remind me, how did the planning commission vote on this?
They voted 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Which isn't surprising, because Fort Smith is very fortunate to have a good planning commission and a good unified development ordinance. All we need to do is follow it.
I'd like to make a motion to amend to remove the RSD2 zoning out of this ordinance.
I will second that.
Directors Christina Katsavas,
Yes.
Settle,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Rego,
No.
Good,
No.
Morton,
Yes.
George Katsavas.
Yes.
Motion passes with 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thanks for watching. I hope that you learned a little bit about how new developments actually happen in City of Fort Smith. I also want to thank the members of the board who I have put on the hot plate here. I don't mean to single them out. We're always going to have some disagreements with some members of the board. It just so happens that on this particular decision that I strongly disagreed with, these are the people who spoke up the most.